Hey to all Metal Maniacs, glad you have joined us once more for another video here on the Iron Horde channel. As most of you know quite well, I have been focusing a lot on the 80s decade. Last week I did a video on some of my favorite 90s records. And for today I will be focusing on the best albums that were released during the 2000s. So stay tuned, get comfortable and be ready for another heavy metal journey. Let's go! And before jumping to the albums, let me introduce you the aim of this channel. It is mainly to review albums and festivals, suggest bands, delve in the cultural aspect of heavy metal in general and more. So if you're interested in this content, please consider supporting us by subscribing, liking, sharing our videos also on social media. That would really help us out. Back to our journey. Now, at the turn of the decade, I was a mid-teenage guy starting to delve deeper into heavy metal. I just knew a few famous bands, the ones everyone knows, and a few extreme bands like Carcass, Mayhem, Obituary, Celtic Frost, and the like. But I was always very intent on discovering the lesser known bands, and the deeper I delved, the more gems I was discovering, and this feeling of discovering new albums which I would play over and over again rather than quenching my thirst, it made me search for more. The more I discovered, the more I wanted to discover. It became kind of like a drug. The more you take, the more you want. And the albums I will be mentioning here are amongst the albums from that decade which kind of formed who I am. It is the decade when I started attending festivals abroad. It was the decade that helped me forge friendships with like-minded metalheads from all over the world, basically. It was the decade when I got involved in the organization of the Malta Doom Metal Festival as well, so it is an important 10 years in my life as a metalhead. That is why I sometimes make a difference between people who listen to heavy metal and metalheads, because the latter is obsessed with the music, the culture, everything. And this decade was the one that forged me, as I said, into what I am today. So let's go straight to the albums, and I'll try and keep it as short as possible, or else I keep on speaking about these records, as usually listed strictly in chronological order from the earliest to the latest. And the first one from the list is from 2001 and probably from the most famous band. I'm referring to the album M16 by the band Sodom, released with Steam Hammer. Sodom has been a band that has been accompanying me throughout most of my life. One of the very first thrash bands I discovered, even before getting into the more famous bands like Slayer, Testament, Exodus, etc. And this record was the first one I actually remember being released and got my CD copy, although unfortunately I can't seem to find it anymore. Might have left it behind somewhere at the time when I used to carry a number of CDs with me around with the Discman and playing it. I don't know what happened to it actually. Anyways, a brilliant thrash record, probably after the 80s classics. This is my favorite from their discography. Great riffs, usual thunderous raspy vocals by Herr Zuch, aka Tom Angel Ripper. Great guitar solos by Berneman, fitting production. I mean, Sodom always was such a consistent band throughout their discography. They sometimes get a bit repetitive in some tracks, but all in all, this is a very solid thrash metal album indeed. favorite track on this record for me would be Cannon Fodder. Moving to 2003, and I chose the album Let the Battle Commence by Doomsword, released with Drakenheart Records, and this is the one of those records that really shaped my approach towards epic metal in general. I remember discovering Doomsword a few years after this record was released, and this album in particular is my favorite from them. There is also a big doom metal aspect in their music. In fact, I often refer to them as epic doom metal, with a little less emphasis on the doom and a lot more on the epic side of things, kind of like a mix of Candlemas and Battery Viking era. And actually the lyrics are mostly about Vikings and related historical events, but the way they are told really fits with the music, with the progression here of the melodies and everything. It just fits like a glove. If you just read the album titles by Doomsword, such as Resound the Horn, Eternal Battle, My Name Will Live On, etc., you can clearly understand what emotions they want to achieve in every record. I have always said to my friends that if I ever had to go to war, hypothetically of course, this is the music I want to listen to, because it transmits such a transcendental feeling where fear subsides and it kind of connects you to a more powerful feeling. The greatness of music, I guess. It is very difficult for me to choose a favorite track here, but I guess I'd go with Into the Battlefield, with the sound of the horn at the beginning and that savage riff that follows. Kind of always gives me goosebumps. Remaining in 2003, and I bring you Crest of the Martyrs by Twisted Tower Dire, released with Remedy Records. For those who have watched my video and know about the mid to late 80s of US power metal bands, this band is basically the band that grabbed that music and carried it through the 90s and through the new century. With their debut released in 97, and this one being their third record, they surely were one of the very few bands that couldn't care less about fashion and popularity and stood their ground, playing a style which still isn't that popular nowadays, let alone during that period. With the great vocals of the late Tony Taylor, rest in peace, on this record, they produced a powerhouse of riffs and melody like no other. Track after track, this is uplifting music where you will find yourself singing the chorus aloud with fellow comrades until you both pass out from too much beer and mead. I mean, that's kind of the feeling I get. One cannot underestimate also that bands like this one also influenced a number of other younger bands to continue playing or start playing the style, some of which I will surely be mentioning in my future video of my favorite albums from the 2010s. So click the subscribe, click the bell so you are immediately notified when videos are posted. My favorite track on this record would be an easy choice, not because the other tracks aren't strong, but because this one is one of my all-time favorite tracks, and I'm referring to Axis and Honor. It's just so damn good, one of the best tracks for me in epic power metal, basically. Moving on to 2004, and it is the time of the Defender of the Crown by the band Broker's Helm, released independently. I have my copy here, which is actually a reissue by Eat Metal Records from 2011, a great 80s band releasing 2 records in that decade and subsequently falling into anonymity throughout the 90s, bar an EP and a couple of singles if I'm not mistaken. But their true resurrection comes with this record, and the one through which I discovered them at the time. You can just hear that some tracks on this record were actually written in the 80s. The style is immediately recognizable. Apparently the track Children of the Nova Dawn is the first song that the band ever wrote. The first track I have ever listened to though by them was Drink the Blood of the Priest, and was immediately hooked. I mean, that organ intro and the slow build-up was too enticing to resist. Nothing pretentious or grandiose here, just some fun-loving, sword-wielding, old-school heavy metal, which is basically the bread and butter of the metalhead nerds like me, I guess, who would have thought the day would come when I call myself a nerd of something, but I think it fits with this context and it actually makes me proud. Anyways, an extremely unique band with some unique characteristics in it, especially Jim Schumacher on bass with his handlebar mustache, funky sunglasses and military hat. He uploads also, has a YouTube channel where he uploads some videos, so check him out and go visit and say hello. So tell them Glenn from Malta sent me here. Favorite tracks is a tie, I guess, between Time of the Dark and Cry of the Banshee. Can choose really, but 2005 is next, and I couldn't leave one of the things that makes me most proud to be Maltese, and this is the album Dominion by Forsaken. It is right here, released with Golden Lake Productions. I don't want to be repetitive here, as I already did quite a thorough review of this record in episode 9 of the Album of the Week series, which I'm linking up here. Go and see that video, see why I love this album so much and how it shaped me from my very first beginnings into who I am today. If you are into epic doom metal, this record should be a landmark for you. On the levels of Epicus by Candlemas, Beyond the Crimson Horizon by Solitude Eternals, which are quite possibly the two bands that exemplify epic doom in all its glory. I dare say that this record actually surpasses those in certain areas, but it's up to you then to delve deeper into it. But anyways, watch the video, give this record a good listen, and come back on here and give me your feedback about it. Let us know what you think about this magnificent record. And 2006 is next, and one of the best records ever is on the line. I'm referring to Mythical and Magical by Pagano, released with Oracle Records. Another 80s band, and another one which didn't really get the credit they deserved until a number of years later. Those who have been following my videos already know what this band means to me. I included them in the new wave of British heavy metal video part 1, because I did part 2 a few weeks ago. I included Alan Jones on last Wednesday's 5 great guitar players you never heard of. So the sound of this band really mesmerized me from the beginning, and I started following them upon the suggestion of Albert Bell, who is the bassist of Forsaken, who was part also of the Pagan Altar Templars Forum, an online group which eventually I joined and which for some time I also was a moderator of. What you get here is a mix of new wave of British heavy metal, folk touches, doomier passages mixed with lyrics focusing on the occult and witchcraft. Yes, kind of a cliche nowadays, but the lyrics are so brilliantly penned by the late Terry Jones that makes the title of this record so apt and defining of the experience you're gonna get by listening to this album. A short personal story about this record right here is that this was actually sent to me directly by Terry himself after a conversation we had together, where I asked him to reissue this album as the copies I was finding for sale were too expensive for me. So he immediately offered to post me his record at no extra expense. Not only that, with the package he sent me Dark Waterer's self-titled record, a band which we had never discussed, but on a note he included on the package kind of, I know you will love this, basically. So he knew me quite well and my tastes. So this record remains special to me, not only for the music but even from a friendship perspective, which I still cherish to this day. And what can I say, rest in peace Terry Jones, you are greatly missed. Favorite track from here, that would be Demons of the Night. Also from 2006 I decided to add the album Alone by Solitude Eternals, released with Massacre Records. This is the one right here, returning to Epic Doom basically, and what better band to represent this subgenre than the legendary Solitude Eternals. This was the last record they have released. Hopefully it won't be the last one though. It wasn't easy to reach the heights of the previous records, which stand amongst the best Epic Doom records ever, but slowly this album grew so much on me that I now hold it as one of their best. It probably has their best track in it, which is Scent of Death, which clocks up to almost 10 minutes, and it is not usual to open an album with the longest track on the record. They are generally left to the end, but anyway, front, back, middle. It's a monolith of a track with crushing riffs, accompanied by the mystical vocals of Rob Lowe, which bring so much excellence to this whole album. John Perez, founder and guitarist, once was asked, why do you leave so much time before you released another album? And basically the reply was, we prefer quality over quantity, not releasing an album just for the sake of releasing, but making sure that what we put out there is of the highest order. And let me tell you, they followed that creed religiously, as each and every album of theirs is a classic, and to be able to still release music like this is a blessing to every epic doom metal fanatic. If I had to choose a favorite track from here, if it wasn't clear enough from the description, it is Scent of Death. Jumping over to 2008, and I bring you Overlords of Chaos by the band Iron Sword, released with Shadow Kingdom Records. Iron Sword are from Portugal. Most of you know that one of my all-time favorite bands is Manila Road. I could insert their records in every decade I've been tackling in each of these videos. For those who want to know more about Manila Road, I have made a video ranking all of their studio records, so go and check that out and kind of delve deeper into this legendary band. You might be asking yourself, what does Manila Road have to do with Iron Sword? Legitimate question, obviously. Once you hear the music of Iron Sword, you will immediately notice the similarity between the two bands. It is like Iron Sword is the adoptive child of Manila Road. They travel together, the child learns from his father during this journey until the day that the child becomes a man and starts walking on his own. And that man who starts walking on his own is Iron Sword. Some don't like this evident similarity, but I love the style of epic metal, kind of savage at times. So if there are two bands doing it with the right attitude, then who am I to complain? This record is their third studio album, and it was the first one I discovered by the band and bought immediately after listening to some samples and excerpts that were posted online at the time. There are no filler tracks on here, from the stomping mid-tempo tracks to kind of the surprisingly soothing chorus on tracks like Dark Shadows of Stygia, or even with a slightly trashy influence up-tempo sound like in Wrath of Chrome or Road Warriors. The songs are great and will bring a grim, barbaric smile to your face directly after the first few notes. All in all, another very consistent band which prefers quality over quantity. You just can feel that artistically everything is really pondered in order to deliver that kind of experience one would expect from such a band. So, favorite track on here, I think that would be Hyperborean Hordes. Also from 2008, we travel to Attica, and I bring you To Death and Beyond by the band Better Roar, released with Cruz del Sur Records, and this is the album here. Remaining firmly within the epic metal sphere, I could not include something from Greece, the city of epic metal. Better Roar and Iron Sword both are very much influenced by Manila Road, Warlord, Omen, but they bring a distinct personal touch to the music. In general, it feels more melodic, a bit more polished, more power metalish to a certain extent. This effect though doesn't detract from the savagery, which is a kind of very important ingredient to keep that war and destruction effect alive from an epic metal perspective. And for a band named Battle Roar, it couldn't have been otherwise, of course. They need kind of to bring that roar on stage with their music. Keyboards are included also in certain parts of the tracks here to create that majestic aura as well, and not to forget touches of violin, which give us a kind of a melancholic feel in certain parts as well. Yes, there are plenty of emotions through this hour of music, and this is what battles are all about. The adrenaline before, the chaos during the fight, and the sadness or elation after the war and the fight has finished. And we love epic metal because it is really the transposition of life. It incorporates all emotions we all have felt during different periods of our lives. Favorite track on here would be Finis Mundi. We have now arrived in 2009, and I bring you a record and a band which brings back a lot of memories from trips abroad in particular. The album is Vast Oceans Lacrimose by Why Heaven Wept, released with Cruz del Sur Records. What a great cover as well. By the time this album was released, I knew Why Heaven Wept quite well and I liked their music, but wasn't really a huge fan, let's say. But in 2010 I traveled to Germany with some of my friends, and as soon as we arrived there, a day before the festival, we put our bags in the hotel room and went down to have a couple of beers from a bar nearby, which was like the hub of the people who attended this festival. And from outside of the bar I noticed a familiar face sitting at a table. I took a couple of steps closer and I noticed that it was Tom Phillips, the founder and main songwriter of While Heaven Wept, so hesitantly I moved towards the table and introduced myself, and we were invited to sit down and have a couple of beers together. Needless to say, this chat lasted for hours, the whole evening basically, and to the early hours of the morning. The barman actually had to tell us about 3 times to order the last round, and in the end he actually invited us to go out as he had to close the bar. Before leaving we took a photo together and basically everyone went on their way. The day after, everyone was asking each other who are the bands we were mostly looking forward to see. For me it was the doom metal band Saint Vitus. I love that band and to see them live was a dream come true. But one of my foreign friends told me, you wait until you see While Heaven Wept live and maybe you'll change your mind. I still had the previous night of drinking and sharing countless stories with Tom in my mind, so I said sure, we'll be looking forward to that too. And lo and behold, when Why Heaven Wept came to the stage and started going through their set list, let me tell you, those words, wait till you see While Heaven Wept, kept resounding in my head. It was such a majestic performance, filled with emotional pain and so empowering at the same time. Kind of a cathartic experience almost, something which I have never felt with any other band ever. From then onwards it was like something clicked with me and I started viewing their music in a whole different way, kind of understanding every note, every movement in the tracks, and this record remains special to me as it is another amazing chapter in the band's journey. If I had to choose a favorite track from here, that would be Vessel, but this is one of those albums that stand alone. Tracks won't do it justice. It is the whole package that needs to be experienced. A prog power doom album of the highest order for me. PS, that photo I took outside of the bar with Tom Phillips ended up on their Hammer of Doom live LP, Inner Design, so that was quite a pleasant surprise for me. It is actually over here, and such an honor as well to be represented on an album by this great and brilliant band, and if Tom is seeing this, cheers Tom, hope you are doing fine. I hope to meet again with you very soon. And those were the 10 records from the 2000s, a decade that really, as I said, shaped me and my music perspective. It brought me the idea of the underground paradigm that lives and breathes beyond that plastic and to a certain extent fake existence of the mainstream, even mainstream metal world. And I never and I will never leave that underground attitude, the attitude of no compromise and no surrender, the premise that music is the only priority, whatever consequences come out of that are a bonus. In this way, music will be always the ultimate winner. But I guess this is not a discourse that fits most heavy metal followers, unfortunately. Whatever it is, the albums in here solidified and forged within me the passion of heavy metal, and I cannot but be grateful to all the musicians that contributed to these records, as their art has become an integral part of who I am. Here's hoping you have already subscribed to this channel, click the bell and shared our videos. If you have done so already or are going to do it in the imminent future, sincere thanks for your support. From the affiliate links in the description below, we get a small commission at no extra expense for you if you use them and buy through those links, whatever product, not always the one linked. Basically, all is accomplished, and until the next video, stay safe and metal on. Cheers!